Well, Annemiek, nice to speak to you again. The last time we spoke, it was in Dutch. And so welcome again. For me, it's a little bit difficult because I have this feeling that my English is a bit rusty. The last time that I recorded an English podcast or had a proper English conversation has been a long time ago, maybe about a year. But anyway, welcome. And well, can I ask you to introduce yourself? Who are you and what do you do in life?
Yeah, so thank you for having me, William. And thank you for doing this in English. It's much appreciated.
Yeah. You're welcome.
So my name is Annemiek van Helsdingen, and I am the founder of the Academy for Soul-Based Coaching, which is a global online live training institute for high quality coach training. That's it in a nutshell. I'm also a mom. Yeah, I'm also a mom and a wife, and do quite a few other things in life.
Quite a few other things. Well, maybe we'll get to those things. We'll see. Anyway, we'll see if we can do multiple episodes about certain subjects. So the Dutch podcast was quite interesting as well, because I got a lot of questions still to ask about that episode and things we talked about. But let's dive into your entrepreneurship as well. When did you start with being an entrepreneur, and when did you start with the foundation of the Academy for Soul-Based Coaching?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was not one of those people who had this dream of wanting to become an entrepreneur. It was more born out of necessity that I made that step. That was in 2005, and that was following a big burnout, and then really literally taking me quite a few years to get back on my feet. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to explore how I can do this on my own terms. And that's when I started to do the work that I already was doing. So that was corporate consultancy, change management, executive coaching. And I started to do that by myself. And then not long after, merged with two of my best friends to have a consultancy together. And so I did that for quite a long time. And I was always really curious about, how come people do what they do, even when it leads them to places where they don't want to be. Mm-hmm. And that happens more often than we think or want to know. And so that brought me to this quest of all these models that you can use in consultancy and that I'd been studying and trained in. And I was always like, well, we can use this model. And I can give you a great, logical explanation of why, but I can do the same for that model or for that one. So, why would we choose one over the other? And that got me really curious, right? What's the difference that makes the difference, as NLP famously asks? And that brought me to a skill set and a tool set of clean language and symbolic modeling. And that really opened up self-generated change in individuals, but also in groups. And that was really exciting to me. I for the first time, I started to experience how easeful change projects can be, or change processes can be for people. And that's why we started to bring that to the Netherlands and started to incorporate that into our work. And that was very exciting. At the time, I already said to my colleagues at times, like, yeah, you know what, the work that we're doing, it's actually we're corporate priestesses.
Yeah.
I was not allowed to say that to our clients, but it was so true. It felt so true to me. And this is why I then moved on to the Academy for Soul-Based Coaching. Again, I was helped, quote unquote, by my health, because my immune system just stopped cooperating with what I was doing. And I had to withdraw from that. And in that period of time, I was just really curious and very frustrated because I had to let go of everything I'd built up, and including the ideas about myself, about who I was in the world. But I also knew I was not here to just sit, and watch life go by behind the window. I'm here with a contribution. I felt that very strongly. So I started to really explore. So what is it? What is it that I can do? What do I feel called to do? And this is when I started to notice that when I stayed really, really close to that calling, that I could do things. Whereas if I was like, if I felt like a little impulse and then let my head get away with it, I would be back in my bed before very long, right? It was very direct feedback. So eventually people asked me, can you train us in how you've been training coaches? Because I've been training coaches since 2007. Can you do that for us now? And I was thinking, well, I can, but not in the way that I used to do this. So there are things that need to be different. And that really brought me to start looking at my spiritual path, which I'd been walking parallel to my corporate career all that time, kind of not really wanting to talk about it. It was like, that was something I did for me.
Yeah,
I was
there was
kind of like,
another life.
let's just, yeah, exactly. It's like, let's ignore that. That's not what a professional is all about. And I just noticed that it was not optional, that needed to be part of what I do in the world. And this is where soul-based coaching came to be. And what is important to say about that is that it is a dogma-free approach to bringing spirituality and coaching together. And I think it just makes so much more sense to me, my body, my soul, but also to what I see for our clients and our coaches.
Yeah, wow. Well, that is a whole lot of information in a few sentences there. If we go back just a little bit more, like you said, you had your corporate life, your corporate world, and you had your ambition in that. And next to that, there was a different life. There was a spiritual life. And was there any stress in keeping them separated from each other? Did that contribute maybe to like a burnout or misalignments in any way?
Maybe, yeah. I think I wasn't aware of that at the time, but I was still young. I was what was I, 28 or when that burnout hit me. And it had an immune component to it as well, but it was definitely also a burnout. I was so busy trying to adhere to and adjust to what was the right thing to do, or how you were supposed to do work, or how you were to be supposed to be a professional, or and very sensitive to what the unwritten rules of the workplace were at the time, right? This is like 25 years ago, but it's still something that I still operates for a lot of people. There are these ideas about what is appropriate, or what is professional, or what is like a good idea to do in the workplace. And I was very carefully curating that what I did was that, and not the other things of me. So there were a lot of things that I didn't take with me into my workplaces, and with, as I was walking that spiritual development path, more and more started to kind of seep in. And at least I gave myself permission to acknowledge and feel and be who I am. But there was definitely, it was like, I would have said, yes, we're doing corporate priestessing work, dear client. Hey, you up for it? And sure, I can talk business, and there's no problem with that. But the fact that my colleagues were saying, no, don't do that. That tells us enough, because that's weird. It's woo-woo. It's not solid. It's not. I keep coming back to this word professional today, but it's like it's not done. It's not. You're not supposed to do that. And I think that is a form of making ourselves ill as a collective, deciding that there are parts of life or of humanity that are not welcome, or that are not useful in our workplace. I don't think that is serving anyone.
No, it is not. And if you look back and, at the burnout period, how did the spirituality help you? I mean, hey, you mentioned something you experienced like a calling. So I would say you came more in alignment with your own soul's mission. How did you deal with the burnout, and how did the spirituality help you?
Yeah, I think it's actually something I've been thinking about a lot this week. I was writing something on LinkedIn, and this was kind of popping up. These, like, it's so interesting that these are so separate from each other, like the world of work and then the world of spirituality and spiritual well-being. And I think, spirituality is an aspect of humanity, of being a human,
Yeah.
Regardless of how, if you are religious or practice a religion or not. It's just part of, we have bodies, we have minds, we have feelings. We also have a spiritual connection with life, or our place in life. And so much of a lot of people are not born into a tradition where they feel like, yes, this is me, this feels truthful to me, this feels right in relation to this world is fast changing, and religion is not fast changing overall. So there's a lot of dogma. So a lot of people don't feel at home there anymore. And so when do we enter that world of spirituality? It's when we have like a dark night of the soul, right? When with a burnout, or when we're out of alignment. And that's when we turn to find ways in which to get answers that we can't get from our logical minds, or that we can't get from the people around us. And then that's when we start to tap in again. And I think for me as well, it's been a vital part of my healing and growth over the years, ever since that first burnout. And it's been steps and layers and kind of spirals to get to where I am today. And the spirals continue, because I think that aspect of human growth is just part of what we're here to do. Just like, a rose bush will keep growing towards the light.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're meant to do too. Yeah.
Yeah. So you went through a transition, and what was the biggest transition that you're still aware of that happened in that period?
I think back then, that burnout, that was learning to give myself permission to step outside of the patterns that I was aware of, like the system as it was. So I was literally giving myself the assignment: live by your own rules. And that was in my schedule, for example. How much or when do I do things? Well, when my body can do things. Okay, so what needs to happen to create a life that works in relation to that, and a work life that works in relation to that? So that, I think that was the core part of what I started to do then. And that was the beginning of a journey, right?
Yeah.
And actually, the spiritual journey had started before that, but like a lot came after that as well.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds good. It sounds like honoring yourself, discovering yourself, honoring yourself, who you truly are, and then acting upon that, and stepping into life with the new information, the new discoveries.
Yeah, and with it takes a lot of courage. I found for me, it took a lot of courage. I come from a background of teachers and lawyers and healthcare, and so it's all about how can you serve the system, right? How can you, like, you're this wheel in the big hole, and how do you play your role right? That's how I've been raised to do that. So giving myself permission to say, well, actually, I'm not in that hole in that way. I'm not going to change my shape to fit into that hole. I'm going to be my shape, and then find a place where I can contribute. And I'm going to decide that I'm going to create that place. That's been, that felt like a really courageous thing to do.
Yeah. And what would your say, like, biggest advice would be to listeners that are actually in a burnout or in a dark night of a soul? What advice would you give them?
That's a really beautiful question. I think the first thing I would say is that you're okay, even though it feels deeply uncomfortable. and it is so hard and can be so tough, you are actually okay. And the fact that this is what you're experiencing means that there's a real opportunity to come into who you really are. And it takes courage and it takes support. And so find the support and find how you can step into that courage, because life is too short to keep yourself in that place which is not aligned for you.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. That is good. And especially the part that you are okay. Even
Totally
if there
okay.
is like pain or unease or whatever, you are okay. And this could be like a new beginning. And that's what we see and read in all the even religious books, you know, Hume writes about the dark night of the soul, that if you accept the dark night of the soul or the burnout or maybe the anxiety and start asking questions and stop fighting it, something very beautiful can come out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is a big part of waking up to who we truly are. And that can sound a bit grandiose or overused, but I think it is really exactly what it's about.
Yeah.
You know, this is a time where we see that the way we've been doing things is no longer working. And this is on an individual level and on a more collective level. And wherever we get these signals, it is, it's a big opportunity to start exploring what else could there be.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So now you are educating coaches of people who want to become a coach, and it's a very special kind of coach because it's a soul-based coach. And could you explain a little bit about soul-based coaching, and is the focus in soul-based coaching on the coachee or on the coach, or maybe both?
Well, the focus of the coaching process itself is on the coachee, of course. I mean, that's why that's our reason for being here. In the coaching this is a modality of coaching that can be used for any coaching question. So any work or life related coaching question can be worked on in this way. And I guess the label of soul-based coaching, when I chose it really was to put the spotlight on us being whole people and not just people who have a mind or a body. And so this modality very much invites and invokes all of the pieces of the client to be part of the conversation, including their soul knowing. So their deep knowing, without us having any kind of expectation of what that looks like or what that sounds like, because everybody has their own way of accessing that information. Even people who are maybe listening and thinking, I have no clue, I have no idea how that will work. I can guarantee you that when we start to work with you, within the first 5 minutes, you will start to notice that you're accessing information that is very deeply inside of yourself, that is different from what you have or that you're very familiar with in terms of your thoughts and feelings. And so that is the layer that we work on, that invites all of that knowing to be part of the change process.
Wow. It sounds really good. Getting into touch with your own soul. Could you elaborate a little bit more about how you see the soul? What is our soul?
Such a beautiful question. And you know what, William?
Yeah.
So many ways of answering that. And at the same time, there is none. Like there are a lot of spiritual traditions who have their own slightly different ways of giving definitions. So for me, the realm that we tap into, that deeper knowing that I just spoke about, that is the same realm that I find when I do spiritual ritual or ceremony. It is a realm where there is a different kind of awareness and a different kind of relationship with space and time. And for me, that is that realm of soul. And it is looking at it from a more of a definition kind of place.
Yeah.
For me, the soul is that part of our eternal being that is incarnated into the flesh, right? That is literally inside of our bodies. And so I find the terminology of the higher self somewhat, well, we talked about it in the Dutch podcast.
Yeah,
but
I know.
There's some
I
things
still
around
remember that. Yeah.
But it's like, for me, that information is, we can access it through our bodies. So we don't need to go up or out or,
No.
ascend in that way. We go into the depths. And that's where there's like a portal into everything.
Yeah. Could you say, maybe just a little bit to simplify it a little bit more and make it visual? I always think of the soul as my real me, and my real me is like eternal light. And eternal light living inside of this body. The world calls William. I call myself William. And as soon as my body dies, the lights will travel on, maybe into a new life or into a different realm. I don't know. But this light is one with the universe, or like an emanation of the universe.
Beautiful. Yeah. And it's, I don't know if I have a better metaphor for it. The real me, it does a bit of, that gives relationships to ego and other models of psychology. Or that could give that, but I feel you when you say that. There's there's a part of me that is so much bigger than this human form and this moment, and not bigger in the sense of better. It's more encompassing.
Yes. Yeah, and it's complete. It's whole. It's
yes.
Like, that's why I say the phrase "the real me," because of course I am the real me as well, just as I am sitting here and talking to you. But that me is tarnished, maybe damaged by life, with all of my experiences and what have you.
Yeah, and it's like I'm remembering a quote from John O'Donoghue, who was an Irish. He's a poet, or he was a poet, but he was also a philosopher and a pastor. And so I recently heard an interview with him, and he was pointing to how there is a part of us which lives outside of time and space, where we are still whole, which nothing can unwhole us. And it's like, when we enter this modality of work, that is the resourcefulness that we tap into. Yeah, that is the consciousness level that we tap into. Yeah, and that's where we have so much resourcefulness, where we have so much capability, so much potential, and we can just tap into it, utilize it, and live that, because it's all part of us too. And it's not as, and part of the process of soul-based coaching is to tap into that and then bring it into, the everyday me of the client, who is affected by by all of the experiences that they've gone through in really good ways and in ways that have been really painful. And so to allow for healing to happen through that reuniting of what is possible, and then also realigning the inner system, including thought structures, emotional patterns that people run, so that they can be in a more aligned, they can live their life in a more aligned way, both on the inside and on the outside. Yeah.
And how would you know, like you said earlier on, sometimes in a coaching session, you can help people within like 5 minutes experience their soul knowing. how can you know as a human being that it is not my ego speaking or my thoughts, my mind? And how do you know it is like your true soul speaking to you?
I love the question. As a coach, as a client, because as human beings, we have, I don't know, is it 50,000 thoughts a day? I always forget the number.
Yeah, they
There's
say
like
around
lot.
70, 80,000.
Yeah, exactly. And so most of those are repetitive, right? They're like parts of thought loops that we know very well, very well. Same with the way that we feel. We have habits in how we feel and what we're tapped into. And there's a relationship between the two. Sometimes they say, well, you're thinking things first, and others say you're feeling things first. Doesn't really matter. There's a lot of familiarity around these things, and people have often spent a lot of time thinking about the topic that they bring into a coaching container, for example. But when you start to access this soul knowing, then people are starting to realize that they're surprised by the answers. They're outside of that familiar, busy universe. Thinking, feeling stuff. And they're actually starting to tap into the essence of that. And so the client is surprised. As a coach, you can see it because the way that they speak changes. So there's something about the pace, there's something about where their attention is. There's not as much story anymore. There's not so much talking about things that have happened, but it's more of an inner inquiry and giving words to an emergence of insight that is starting to happen.
Do you see when it happens with someone else that their emotion changes? Like if there's a real soul knowing, that there's more like tranquility, peace, or even maybe happiness in oh wow, that's the first time that I experienced this.
Yeah, and also anger, frustration, right? Because a big part of our psychological makeup is to keep us safe and going through our day-to-day life, right? And sometimes an insight really kind of opens up and people are starting to feel really angry about how things have turned out, or, about something that has happened. And that is, that kind of emotional level of kind of accessing, it's like looking in a mirror. Maybe it is. But it's like seeing life for what it is, like your life experience for what it is. And yes, having sometimes a response to that. But very often it's more in the direction of more peacefulness, more acceptance sometimes. But definitely more nourishedness. So there's a sense of when you're really tapping into that level of knowing, there's a real sense of nourishment that is there for people.
Sometimes, I realize now when I hear you explaining that our vocabulary, there's not enough words or not the right words even to describe that feeling. And it's like that feeling when I am outside and in nature, that I can get like absorbed by nature or animals and the sun, or even at night when I walk outside and look at the moon and the stars, I get like immersed in what I see, in their beauty, and I feel connected. And how do you find words to describe that? That is sometimes so difficult.
And I think a lot of people have experience of that. Even people who would describe themselves as, no, I'm not spiritual, that's not for me. They might find it when they're, climbing the top of a mountain on their holidays, and just kind of having that deep, there's like it comes with a deep presence, right? Which is what you also describe when you're in nature. But for sometimes having some physical exercise helps people tap into that. But a deep presence, and then this openness for like the world around, like the natural world around you. And there's like, for me, that's where I find the divine. right? That's
Yes,
my
exactly.
church. That's my
Exactly.
church.
That is your,
My temple.
exactly. Yeah. Wow. I recognize that immediately when you say that. And it gives you a feeling of peace doesn't even cover the experience. It's peace, it's oneness, it's joy, happiness all at once, feeling safe.
Yeah.
Even loved.
Yeah, absolutely. And belonging to myself, belonging to like the greater whole. But also there's like in a way it's like I'm in the right place at a very deep level.
Yeah.
That I experience in that space. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, cheapest, huh? I get so enthusiastic about just talking about this because then I feel it all inside. And
yeah. And this is one of the perks of this work, is that you get to have people meet that place in themselves.
Yeah.
But as you're holding space for this, you're also like steeped into that quality of presence. And we're often, when we're training our coaches, this is like a year-long in-depth training, but there's we often talk about how we're just in the sense of awe, right? Like there's like to be that close to, like there's like a sacredness to you and to me and it's like being allowed to witness that. That is so incredibly special.
Yeah. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs listening as well. How would having a soul-based coach in your life and in your business, how would it help you in your business?
Great question. So I do, for example, coach managing directors to work on the things that are most challenging to them. And it's not necessarily business strategy, although sometimes that comes into it. But so I'm helping them deal with the biggest hurdles that they're finding in their way. And it's often to do with how they relate to the things that are happening around them, so that they can take a next step in the business. It's so beautiful. And also it is so very practical, right? Because what we do is we help the client tap into their deepest knowing and find their own answers for what is next. But it's not just logical mind answers and like an action plan. More. It is like an inner realignment, so that what you want to have happen is like the logical thing that's going to happen, because everything is pointing in the same direction. Yeah. And so we're working with like the inner parts that are maybe holding you back, or the inner parts that are in the way, so that all of these parts start to cooperate and work together. And so then issues might not even be issues anymore. And so, it's like last time it's recently worked with a team where they had to, this was like a team within an IT organization, and they were not really, people really didn't know where to find them. It's like they were kind of left alone, and they were kind of outside of the loop too often. And so they really had to start, taking up their position and really do that in a very effective way. And then, while working with them, I remember going back there one day after a little while, because they, we'd work together, they were going to do some things, and I was going to go back and check in and just kind of take the next step. And I asked them, what is it that, what's happened since we last spoke? It's the update. And they said, well, not much really. And I was like, oh, really? But then they started to talk about, well, we're doing this, and we're doing this, and we're doing this, and we're doing this. And I'm like, guys, do you realize that all of these are exactly in alignment with your desired outcome, with where you want it to be? It's not even new anymore. You're finding it like the most natural thing in the world. And that is because all of the internal parts have clicked into place.
Wow. Yeah, and then you have to help them to see that.
Just realize it. We're just doing a moment to kind of go and pause and go, oh, look at that. Oh, yes. Okay. And so, that's how change becomes actually really easeful.
Yeah.
Because you're taking away the inner barriers and you're helping people speak the same language, like literally, and then help them.
Yeah, wow. So if like an entrepreneur comes to you or one of your coaches that you trained, do you ever see like they come with a desired outcome? Then the process starts and they get to know themselves, their soul, the deepest knowing that the desired outcomes that they want to change that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And here it's different. If you're working in an organization, you have to deal with the kind of frames that an organization sets, right? But if you're an entrepreneur, you have a lot more freedom. But absolutely, all the time. And a part of that process of coaching is also like soul knowing is not something that you tap into once. That is a very alive intelligence, and so it is about you keep on checking back in with what's happening, what's unfolding, and yes, it can't not change almost the desired outcome because you keep on learning more about yourself. You keep on seeing where you restricted or confined yourself or limited yourself in the past, and you start feeling into the possibility of actually there's something much bigger that is possible. And bigger doesn't mean like higher numbers or bigger results, but it can also be much more freedom, much more spaciousness, however that translates. So an updated desired outcome is a good sign in this work. Yeah.
And if you want to become a soul-based coach, in your training, is there like emphasis on you have to be able to tap into your own soul before you can even become a soul-based coach? And does that always have to be in a certain kind of balance? Or is the magic maybe in the certain kind of questions that the coaches ask?
Yeah, so there's always multiple ways to answer a question like this. First one is that you do not need to be perfect in order to be able to help people on their way. So if you're anyone listening thinking, but I don't know how to do this, so I can't do that. I first have to go and meditate in the Himalayas for like 10 years in a cave, and then I'll be ready. Like that's not true. This way of coaching, we often kind of use the metaphor of midwifing. So it's more of a process of helping another person through a process. But at the same time as you're learning the skills, you're also being the recipient of coaching a lot throughout the year. And so massive changes happen for people in terms of how they connect with themselves, how they relate to themselves and their lives, how they are in their work, alongside of the coaching skills that they're taught.
Yeah, and I can imagine that if people sign up for a training, like the 1 year training, that they already had like an experience of listening to their soul, because otherwise they maybe would not even have a desire or longing to become a soul-based coach, right?
Yeah, I think the people that come to us are people that are usually a lot of them actually come from corporate backgrounds or are coaches or therapists. Like I'd say the other half are healers who want to add that piece of like solid skills to their toolkit. But like the people that come from more corporate backgrounds, they're often people who have worked with like the systemic nature of organizations, for example, who are already aware that life is not linear. It's not 1 + 1 is 2, or like there's a cause and an effect. No, everything is circular. At least, and more like sphere-like. It's multidimensional and complex, and people who have noticed that for themselves, that spiritual dimension in life is actually really essential, and not because we have to tell people how they need to be spiritual or we need to create dogmas, but it's more about creating spaces where that is welcome for people if that is needed. Right. So one of the beautiful things about the soul-based coaching modality is that it will invite those aspects forward without making it a big deal, right? And without having any expectation about what it should look like, or how it should show up, because it will be there. It's part of human nature.
Yeah.
So the people that come to us do have an understanding, or have been getting these nudges in themselves that yes, I can't do this without that.
Are there like any requirements to become like a soul-based coach or being trained by you?
Well, you have to be willing to invest a year with
Yeah.
us and to show up. And it is both really beautiful and nourishing and challenging for people. So, and that is because we're working from a paradigm shift, like literally a different paradigm. And it means unlearning as well as learning. And it means that you're invited to step outside of your comfort zone in order to develop these really in-depth skills so that you can be in real integrity with yourself and the work. So that's the main requirement, that you're willing to do that, and that you're really feeling that, yes, that is what I want to do. Yeah.
And if people are like curious, they can always attend a free workshop that your business gives.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can talk about this. And as you said earlier, not for everything do we have words, because this is outside of our everyday experience. And so having the experience of how the work is, actually going through it, both as a coachee and as a coach, that will give you a lot more clarity about how, what the skill set is about that we are teaching.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you, Annemiek. I think we should leave it at that for the moment. And for the people listening, if you are interested, just check out the show notes. We'll put a link up there. You can find the website and a link for a free workshop. I attended one of those workshops, and I think it was the workshop about holding space. And that was really inspiring and opened my eyes and heart even more, and made me hungry for more. So you never know. But anyway, thank you so much, Annemiek. And if there are any questions, just ask them. Send them to support@williammeister.com, and we will try and do another episode and answer those questions. So thank you, Annemiek. Is there like a final word of wisdom, advice for the world outside there?
In a way, for me, this work is about like reclaiming the heart of humanity, which means saying like a very big thing to say. I think if there's any way in which people feel that there is a layer of heart missing in what they're doing in their lives, that I highly, highly recommend that you check us out.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.